So the thing about this conference, it's at the end of the year, so we can plan for next year, and it has to be done by 6 because it's still sunshine out, and so all the sessions are short. So all of us have to be totally attentive and perky. Now the PowerPoint was sent in. I believe you have it, and this one too. We sent you the PowerPoint slides, so if you want to, you have total permission to use it. Well, raise your hand if you're middle school people. Excellent. That's where most of my work has been in terms of interventions for years. Actually, this is my 58th year of teaching. Whoa. Raise your hand if you can beat that. No. And not everybody wants to beat it anyway. So you're going to participate. Oh, yes, you are. So first thing, you different tables, get a partner, give yourself the numbers 1 and 2. Middle one's a 1, the other 2 are 2s, and go. 1 and 2, good. A, try it over there. Yes. Perfect. Okay, fall silent. We'll say things together. We'll say things to partners. And I will be walking down this aisle. And if you have a purse out, then put it down. And this aisle, bury things so that I can move around. All right, excellent. We are set to go. And read the title with me and go. Scaffolding, Reading Comprehension, Applying What We Know to Informative Passages. Now, if you went to a session by Kim St. Martin, who I've worked with for years, or you listened to the keynote this morning by Sharon Vaughn, you're going to see that this is totally in concert with those. So my colleague, Dr. Mary Gleason, and I researched for many, many years, rewards plus science, rewards plus social studies. So this is embedded in that. But this is what we're now doing in content area classes in middle school and high school. And basically saying, a strategy I teach in social studies would be useful to use in health, would be really nice to use in science. And then the kids will have more than one exposure to it, and they will actually gain those skills. And then they can apply them to different disciplines, but we're going to give them some basic ideas. Well, this starts with an idea. Not an idea, this is what we know. That if you're going to read this material or that book, there are 4 different skills that you need to bring to bear. And one is the student, everybody, reads the words accurately and fluently. So we know from Sharon Vaughn's research that 81% of all children referred to intervention, that their primary problem is they can't read the words. And there is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact you can't read the words. One day I was at Plain Top walking down for dinner with Jan Hasbrook, and right in front of me is a woman wearing a sweatshirt, and it says, "There is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact you can't read the words." Anita Archer. And so I tapped her on the back and I said, "Hi, I'm Anita Archer." And she said, "Would you sign my sweatshirt?" So she had a marker and I signed it. It's the only sweatshirt I've ever signed. But it is an important reminder that we have a lot of middle school children who can't read the words. And then one that was focused on by Sharon Vaughn's research is the student, everybody, understands the meaning of the words. So we, of course, have great variability in comprehension, and we have really good variability in vocabulary that children bring to middle school. So one of their predominant problems might be not knowing the meaning of words in their science book, in their social studies book, and that they have to have adequate what, everyone? Background knowledge. So we might need to teach them the background knowledge necessary for the passage. So if the children can read the words accurately and fluently, and if they have the vocabulary, and if they have the background knowledge, they should have better comprehension. But it does require that they actually focus, what, everyone? Attention on the critical content. Now, every single person here has someday sat down to read something when your mind was going to other things. Like, oh my gosh, it's the last week of school. I better go, oh, I didn't get anything for lunch. I read a little bit. Oh, I wonder if someone's going to take out the dog. Maybe my husband will, no. And, hey, and have you ever had the next day pick up the book and have absolutely no idea of what you've read? Raise your hand if you've had that experience. Well, our kids have it all the time when they're not focused on the content, focused on the content. So what this reminds us of is what we might have to do, even in general ed classes, to facilitate them reading a segment of science or social studies. So this one was selected from a school that I'm working on, and what we are doing is we're teaching comprehension, or excuse me, vocabulary across all grades, every day, every subject. It doesn't matter who you are, you're a math teacher teaching vocabulary, a PE teacher teaching vocabulary, the art teacher, everybody's teaching vocabulary. And then we are teaching the background knowledge as it pertains to the content knowledge that we're teaching and the content buried in the passages. And we're also helping kids decode words that they might be unfamiliar with, never have said, never have heard, teaching them how to do that. And then we're focusing their comprehension. But what we decided to do, because focusing comprehension can mean we give you comprehension strategies and we give you writing strategies. But we decided to make them gradually cumulative over time. So you'll see that, because I picked this one to be the first group we taught, but then we're adding to what they're doing in response in terms of comprehension strategies and in terms of writing strategies. Got sort of the big picture, right? Okay, we're doing this in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. All right, so here's what we know. If you read the research on comprehension, these big ideas are often stressed in what we would do, everybody, before passage reading or during passage reading or after passage reading. And so I chose to use, with this group, I was working with a passage on bird, what, everyone? Migration. Now, the reason I picked this passage is because it's from a program I did long ago called Skills for School Success, which was an excellent program. I wish it was still available, but I own the copyright, so woo, you can use it. All I had to say was, Anita, can we have it? And she said, sure, you can have it. You wrote it. Okay, good. All right. So, but copyright date, that's important for you. And so you have permission. So the first thing I did is reread the passage, but I also asked myself, are there any vocabulary words that as we read it, I could do what's called fast mapping, give them a quick definition of the word. So for what word, everyone? Annual. I'm just going to say, well, that means it's yearly. An agency is an organization. A journey, another word for it is a trip, and a destination is the end of the trip. So as we read it, I was just going to give them a little explanation of some words. And so before. Now, when we went through what are some of the challenges that might be barriers from you comprehending, well, then I better prepare you to leap over those barriers. For example, I might want to teach the what, everyone? The pronunciation of unfamiliar words. I might want to teach you vocabulary, and I might want to teach you background knowledge. Yes. So let's just look at this preparation. And I'm going to tell you, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. Because the more complex it is, the fewer people are saying, well, I'm never doing that. I never do that. They won't say it out loud, but you can go. So keep it simple. And so what are we going to do before? Pronunciation, vocabulary, and background knowledge. So in terms of pronunciation, I read the passage and I asked myself, are there any unfamiliar words that they may not be able to sound out, that they may not be able to, what, everyone? Pronounce. And some of them, I could just tell them as we read the passage, or when I taught, what, everyone? Vocabulary, I could do pronunciation and vocabulary together, or as it was being read, or I could teach some pronunciation beforehand. Now, some of you might be familiar with rewards, and we teach a multisyllabic strategy for reading long words. Circle the prefix, circle the suffix, underline the vowel, say the part, say it fast, make it a real word. I mastered it. But here's what I would do for the range of teachers, is I would have them simply to say, ooh, these words, they might not be able to sound out, so I'm just going to list them, but I'm going to loop under it for the parts, okay? And so we called it loop, loop, looped. And one day a middle school kid raised his hand and said, is that like when you have too much to drink and you're looped? Okay. I mean, you've been there, right? Okay. So, be my students, we're going to continue learning more knowledge about birds, which is our first species in our science class. And we're going to learn about the migration of birds. And first, I want to be certain that the long words that you'd be able to read. So I have segmented these into parts. And remember, every part has one vowel sound. And get your finger up here. Every part has one vowel sound. So, and read the first part, everyone. In, and the next part is involved. And the word is involved. What word? Involved. Teacher talk. If it has ed ending because of the 3 different choices, and many of them might have a wrong language. Most students learning English go ed, involve ed. So I just pronounced the word for them to correct that error. And first part, everyone. Reg, say the name of this letter. U. Reg, you, and everybody. Late. Regulate. What's the whole word? Regulate. So any teacher could do this. All they have to do is put loops underneath it. Some people like to call them scoops, and we give them that academic freedom. All right. So, simple way, and we found in one separate study where we were comparing intervention kids in rewards to just having classroom teachers go loop, loop, loop. And we found that rewards was much more successful, but there was significant gains just with practicing reading words by syllables. All right. So then we say, ooh, what are we going to do in regards to what, everyone? Vocabulary. Now we got a number of possibilities. First, I want to know, are there some, what, everyone? Essential vocabulary terms. I love this word, essential vocabulary, meaning that it is critical in the moment and critical in the future. So it's critical in the moment to understand the passage, but it's word that might be useful in the future. I could address it if it is, sometimes the meaning of the word is adequately taught in the passage. In fact, in informative passages, they often do this. Like they have a chapter on natural resources, and they define natural resources, and they have examples of natural resources, and they have non-examples of natural resources. And so then it's not as critical that I give a lot of time to it. I might introduce it, but I might not give it lots of time, because there it is being well-defined and examples given of it. And then I might have a word that the words that I already showed you, annual, that I'm simply going to briefly tell them as we read the passage what the meaning is. But then there's some words that I'm going to, what, everyone? Teach. So today, when she was asked that question, Sharon Vaughn said, well, maybe 5 to 7 words in a week. Well, that's probably about right, but what you would do is you would ask yourself, as you had something that they were going to read, what are the essential words, and how many of these might I just tell them the meaning, or it's defined in the minute, so I'm reducing it down to months. Because I looked in some content areas where they will have, for a short article, 20 words that you are to teach. And there's no probability of keeping that in, getting it to our permanent memory, we have to reduce it down. So we usually put not more than 3 to 5 in a session in terms of vocabulary I'm actually going to teach in depth. Some I'm just going to give the light touch and tell you what it means, like journey's a trip, the end, and that's sort of with a hope and a prayer. But these we're going to teach. So in this material, I had to decide what was taught in the passage and what we could do as we read it. And these were the words that I was going to do as we read. Now that does take a teacher to read the article, but you know, that's sort of like the lowest we could expect is you read it before you read it with your kids. And you're reading it purposely to find words that you could just give a brief definition as you went. And then you could, read it, everybody, explicitly teach the essential vocabulary before. Right, and so I read this article and there was really the need to teach bird migration as a concept, a term, before we read it. And so I used the routine that I included in a book that I wrote with Charles Hughes at Penn State, Explicit Instruction, and it is Very Efficient and Effective Instruction. That's the title. And so first we would introduce the, what everyone, the pronunciation, and be my students. So this article that we're going to read is about bird migration. What is it, everyone? Bird migration. Put your hand on your table. And we are going to look at the word migration, and we are going to say the parts in it slowly. First part, everyone, migration. And again, migration. What word? Migration. In a study that was done at the secondary level by Lene Airy, they had children who weren't retaining the vocabulary, and they had many hypotheses. Maybe it wasn't introduced well, maybe it's not enough practice. But what they found was that many of the children could not remember the word because they were uncertain about the pronunciation. And they did this in high school science with things like the science, all the elements in the science chart, and they didn't remember them, how to pronounce them, because we have to be able to have the pronunciation remembered. We have to have the meaning stored in our cognition. So that was the intervention they did. Everybody, one more time. Migration. Now I do it middle school and high school, elementary, 5th and 6th grade, so that they're sure of the pronunciation, can attach meaning to it, and store it. Bird migration, there's a number of attributes. There's a number of parts in the definition. And read the first one, an annual yearly trip. If we had birds that migrate, and they were in the northern part of the United States, and it began to get cold, ooh, fall is there. They say, ooh, not good. I need to go south. And so they go south to Central America. They have a wonderful winter there while we're in Pennsylvania. And then it starts to get a little bit, their body tells them it's time to go back. And you want to have your babies in Pennsylvania, so you need to go north. So put your hand up here. So birds migrate annually. One migration is, it is fall, and so they go south. And then it is getting to be summer up north, so they go north. Perfect. And do I do that with kids? Absolutely. Next one, everybody. At a certain season, fall and spring. Okay. And the bird takes everybody. That an annual trip at a certain season that birds take everybody from one feeding ground to the next ground. So they were in the north, started to get cold, food was less available, so they went south. And then they wanted to return, but they waited till it would be warm, so there would be food in that feeding ground. So when we have I know you know this term from the work of Isabel Beck and Marma McCoon. A tier 3 word has nothing to do with tiers in MS. No, but there it's domain specific, and the best way to teach it is to bullet out the critical attributes. And so when I taught it, I gave them 2 examples, actually 3 examples of birds in my hometown of Portland, Oregon. And then I checked their understanding. And so you're going to show me yes and no, though I could have cards of yes or no, or a response sheet that says yes and no. But get ready, but don't put this up until I tell you, or down. Bird travels south from North America to Central America. Would that be an example of bird migration? Show me. Yes, it is. And bird travels north from Central America to North America. Is that an example of bird migration? Show me. Yes, because it's an annual trip, a certain season, and the birds take it to go to a new feeding ground. A bird travels from one tree to another tree. Show me. And excellent. So this is a routine that we use to teach it. First, we introduce the what, everyone? The pronunciation. Then we introduce the words, meaning, and then we provide some examples, and then we check their understanding. All right, but we might have what Isabel Beck calls a tier 2 word. That's what I call a suitcase word, that it can go generalized to any place. And that word is regulate in this story, critical to the story, because there are certain things that are done by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to regulate bird migration. So same thing, the word is regulate. What word? Regulate. Hand on your table and tap it out. Go. Regulate. One more time. Regulate. And it is a verb. And read the definition. When you regulate how something is done, you say how it must be done. So when you regulate something, you say how it must be done. For example, we could use the word as a synonym. What word? Control. So when someone will regulate your behavior, they will try to control your behavior. For example, schools, everyone, the for staff and students, and the city and regulates the use of parks. The time you can go to the park, what kind of activities you can do for the park, they regulate. State laws, what everyone? Regulate speed limits on roads and highways. So in this passage, there is an agency called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. What is it called? U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And they want to regulate the movement of migrating birds. But they can't, follow them in an airplane for all the time it takes. So they put bands on the legs, they put the date and where they started and information on it, and then release them to their flock. And later, if they capture them, then they can read that data. So they collect data all the time. Basically, they regulate. They regulate how leg bands are put on birds. So not anybody can say, woo, I want a band on the bird. No. Okay, so again, pronunciation, meaning, examples, and understanding. Could any teacher utilize this as a template for teaching vocabulary? Yes or no? And it's simple. All right. So background knowledge. Okay, I'm teaching this to 6th graders. Think of Pennsylvania 6th graders. Is it possible that all of them have mastered North America, South America, and Central America? Yes or no? No. Do not commit a suicide. Review it. And is it possible that we might not even be able to restate the actual seasons in order? Is that possible? Mm-hmm. So I introduced this with a little background knowledge. I'm not going to assume that they don't have it. Now, sometimes you could simply use the graphics in the book Document cameras are so useful today because you can just put the book under it and use the pictures right in it, woo-woo. Or you might have to teach it, okay? So, and remember, you were at the noon session, that rehearse and retrieve are the two big words for learning knowledge. Rehearse and retrieve, everybody. Rehearse and retrieve. All right, so we already have gotten an idea about migration, which is birds going from one feeding ground to another. But let's have some vocabulary down for the passage. Canada, United States, and Mexico are considered the continent of what, everyone? North America. And Brazil and Venezuela and Colombia, so forth. This is the continent of what, everyone? South America. And in between, we have many small countries that sort of link the two, and they're called Central America. So this is North America, Central America, and South America. That's rehearsal because, woo, the answer was right there. This is and perfect. Now, this one you know really well, but you need to know it in your brain as we do this, reading about each of the birds and their migration. So we have fall, school started. We have fall, then we have what, everyone? Winter, spring, and summer. One more time. Fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer. Once, tell it to your partner and start with fall. See if this, so my problem is, okay, eyes up here, and say it again. Fall, winter, spring, summer. 2, start with summer. Go. Okay, eyes up here. And you had, everybody, summer, fall, winter, spring. Okay, teacher taught. I did not assume this, and thank God I didn't. So it was a good thing that we didn't spend like 30 seconds on it, but would it make a difference in understanding about migration between the continents? Yes or no? Yeah, okay. And then I introduced them to migration, and I already taught it to you, but I wrote out the script for it in case you wanted to model it yourself. Woo, extra special. All right, wow. So I will stop here just for a second. This is total digression, but this is the bird that migrates near my home, right through Portland, Oregon. And it is the smallest of all of the songbirds, and it's the only songbird that cannot sit on anything. It can only hang, so it can't perch. It's the only bird that can't perch, who's a songbird. And we have about, well, the Audubon counted about 60,000 last year that fly from Canada through Portland, Oregon, the last week of September and the first week of October, just like clockwork. And they used to come and stay in old growth forests, which we have fewer of, so they've adopted chimneys. So 3 blocks from my house is a chimney, and it is on a school. And so the school starts in August, but they have to say, we promise not to turn on the heat until all of the Vox Swifts are gone. And so it can, and in October, it can get chilly. So you see children wearing their ski suits to school and wearing them all day long. But it's a big thing because at night, on those 2 weeks, there's about 5,000 people that sit down on the school grounds and watching for the birds as the sun sets. And the birds come in and they start swirling around the chimney, swirling around the chimney until one of them goes in and whoosh, all of them go in and hang. So we now have pictures of them inside. But one day I'm there on a blanket with my friends, and everybody starts clapping when they start going in. Then they clap really loud when their last one goes in. It's like a big production. But this day we had a hawk sitting up on top of the chimney, who was having a few meals. And the children, who are Audubon members, are all upset. So they run over to the policemen there that are watching the traffic and say, stop them, they're eating the box whips. And so the policeman, I'm standing there, he doesn't know how to explain this. He says, Audubon people, help. And so they came over and explained, this is what happens, they need to eat too, and these are pretty tasty, and maybe that's why. So that was so memorable. The day the Swifts had a problem. There they are. So they haven't formed their circle yet. They're just flying in from everywhere else. And yeah. Okay. So, and so then gave them some examples. But once again, get ready with your yes and no. Because of the fire, the birds flew out of the woods. Is that example of bird migration? Don't say it, but show me. No, 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 no. I'm waiting for one over here. Okay, good. And when the weather got colder in the fall, one species of birds flew south to a warmer place. Ooh, good job. Excellent. And I have you explain it to your partner. And a bird flew from one tree to another tree in the orchard. No, okay. So we have given, they can read the words. They have vocabulary that's critical to the passage. They have background knowledge critical to the passage. And so this is what we're requesting that the teachers do with the passage at least 3 times a week, of getting the kids prepared and then reading the passage with them. Just another little one. I didn't know this, but in the article it talks about flyways, and this is the flyway on the Pacific coast. And now here's the problem. You're like between flyways. I know you must have migratory birds. So are you going with the Atlantic or the Mississippi? I'm not sure. Probably closer to the Atlantic. Yeah, I think right in here. Okay. Right. So it depends where you live in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Okay, so we know how to prepare them, but we got to do it. See, that's the problem. It's the doing it. And teachers all agree they may not be able to read the words. They may not know the meaning of the words. They may not have background knowledge. I got to take a few minutes to give them. And here's what I've been told by many secondary people. But Anita, you just went over information that's also in the passage. Aren't you taking some joy of reading away by having duplicated it? And I just want to remind them of the research on learning knowledge. The best series of research was done for more than 20 years just one second. So first in studies in Australia and then in New Zealand, and most of them in New Zealand. And what they found was that students to retain knowledge in a content area class requires 3 total repetitions of the information. We might have it taught to us, we might read about it, we might write about it, but 3 total. So I just say, woo, if I want them to remember it, then some big points like what is migration, I'm gonna do more than one time. The idea that going to feeding grounds that are to the south and then back to the north is such a big idea in it that I'm gonna do it more than one time. All right, so now it's time for us to read. And one thing that was pointed out today, Sharon Vaughn and I have done parallel research, because in her research, she often utilized phonics, use rewards as the intervention. So I would train her teachers who were doing that intervention. So we've had lots of work together. And one was that the students need what, everyone? Repeated reading practice. And so we're going to do this with great, she said, reminded us of deliberate practice, very intentional practice. And to get them to focus on critical content, we're going to, everybody, read, stop, and respond. We're going to read a certain amount, stop, and they're going to take notes. Or we're going to read, stop, and we're going to use her strategy, getting the gist. Or we're going to read, stop, and we are going to reteach it to our partner. Or we're going to read, stop. So throughout that, we're going to use this rhythm, read, stop, respond. And I'm going to teach you some, what everyone? Strategies to enhance comprehension. And we also could ask the students questions. Now, one day someone said to me, Anita, asking questions of students on what they've read is so old school. I mean, really old school. And I looked at her and I said, you know, there's some old schools that are pretty good. And I don't know why you're laughing, but anyway, and so, but there are some that have so much research over time that they really have validity. All right, so we could also improve it by strategies, by asking them questions or teaching them to generate questions, and text structures and features. So all of this is meant to put their attention on the critical content. Here's how we go about it in our work. The teacher divides the passage into what, everyone? Meaningful segments. Often one paragraph, but it could be 2 paragraphs that have the same topic. And the first read it with me. Students read the passage segment silently. Now, again, we did have some children who did what I call silent reading faking. They would look down, look up, and say, I'm done. So we had to make it purposeful. And with 5th graders and 4th graders, we had the students whisper read, because then I could come by and have you read to me, and I have ongoing formative assessment on individual children. So I use that time. I'm not sitting down at my desk while they read. I'm out here listening to you read. And even if you have them read silently, you could come to them, put my hand on your back, you immediately whisper read to me. So you could use it as a routine of formative assessment. And so they read the segment. And one of the things that we found is that could some students have higher fluency than others? Yes or no? Okay, so we had to figure out a way to have them indicate that they finished it, but not stop them from rereading. So we now say, read this paragraph. When you're done, put up your thumb nice and low to show me that you're done, but go back and reread. So I could see you with your thumb up and you're rereading. When the majority of thumbs are up, then I'll regain their attention. So it really worked well to keep the kids reading, because if I put my thumb up and I have nothing to do, could I do something? Yes, never forget, avoid the void, for they will fill it. So that's why we had to go back and reread. And so then I'm circulating and listening to them read. And then we have a second read. And here is sort of based on the level of reading of the students. In many cases, the teacher and the students read it again orally, everybody together at a moderate rate. And the reason, the group that really that was critical for is if I'm teaching intervention, yes. If I have many students that are English language learners, and raise your hand if you have any at your school in the classroom, they might need to hear the pronunciation of the words. And that's one possibility. I could also use closed reading, which we have field tested, and it really helps the attention of middle schoolers. Okay, so I'm going to read when I stop, say the next word. Teacher and read using closed reading. And so the teacher picks out the critical words and the students say those words. And another way to do it, I'm going to read the first part of the sentence, you say the second part. Students read. Now, some people like that better because it maintains the coherence of the sentences better. But either way, it keeps them alive and with you. So closed reading or either one of those could be used. Or I could call on individuals to read, not my favorite, because then 1 out of the 25 are practicing their reading, and that's going to reduce the total amount of practice. But we could have the student could read with their partners, and if they read with their partners, we would also use the me or we option. Don't forget to take that one back to your schools. Something super simple. I really like things that are high outcome and low prep. That's my favorite thing, and me and we is a useful one. Takes no time, but it's very valuable to your students. All right, well, one possibility to get you focused, we've read it one time to yourself, we've read it again, maybe to a partner or Coral read it, and now we might utilize a what, everyone, strategy. Well, thank goodness that I picked the strategy that has been, let me just see, you have a second copy of it. Originally, Getting the Gist was done with Doug and Lynn Fuchs and Pat Mathis were the researchers in the PALS program. It was called what, everyone? Paragraph shrinking. And they did it with elementary students through 6th grade. And then Sharon Vaughn and her research group sort of expanded on it, called Getting the Gist. And I put that in your slides too, so you could pick either one. They're the same big idea. Okay, so now you're 6th graders, and looking up here. So when we read this passage for comprehension, first thing we're going to do is we're going to read it to ourselves, then we're going to read it together, and then I'm going to ask you to what, everyone? Name the who or what. And you're going to say to yourself, who was the main person or the main and then I'm going to ask you to, everybody, tell the most important thing about the who or what. And then I'm going to ask you to say the main idea in 10 words or less. So this will make you shrink it down and hone in on what is the main idea. And so I'm going to introduce a strategy, but I would also model it. So everybody, you're going to read this paragraph to yourself. When you get to the period, go back and read it again. But as soon as you get to the period, put your thumb up to show me you've read it once, and then read it again and go. Excellent. And I'm going to read when I stop, say the next word. Migration is the given to the yearly, okay, trip birds make from one feeding ground to another. They leave in the to find food in warmer and return to their summer sometime in the where they and they're young. So we've read it, and now we're going to, my turn to do this, and I do it. I'm going to name the who or what this is about. Now, it does mention birds, so it is about birds, but it's about something specific about birds. It is about their what, everyone? Their migration. And next I have to tell the most important thing about the who or what. Okay, boy, one important thing about migration is that they move to a new place to find food. I think that's really important. That's the major reason that they are moving. A certain season is to get food. And then read it, everyone. Say the main idea in 10 words or less. Okay. You count. If I don't, you get to say, shrink it gently. Okay. Bird migration refers to the movement of birds from place to place. Luckily, I already did this. Migration is when birds fly to a distant feeding ground. Woo, woo, come on, woo. Okay, so this is just a reminder that if you're going to teach a strategy, you have to model it, and maybe more than one time. This is not that easy, but it's teaching kids exactly how to focus on the critical information. And in our work here, we actually had the students write down the sentence so that they would end up with a written summary. But I could also do it with you. So let's see what our time is. And we don't have time, but I could have you read it to yourself. We'd read it together. I'd have you whisper to your partner, name the who or what, and then whisper to your partner, tell the most important thing and say it 10 words or less, and then write down the main idea statement. So this was originally done where it was teacher-led, but it was leading up to where the partners would do it. So we would read it, and then I'd say, one, you are the teacher, and she would turn to your partner and say, name the who or what, tell the most important thing, say it in 10 words or less. Both of us will write it down. So it's meant to be a partner strategy, but it could also be an independent strategy. I read a paragraph, I ask myself, name the who or what, tell the most important thing, say it in 10 words or less, and then I record that. So it's meant from teacher-led to partner-led to individual-led. All right? And I think that yeah. So this is the one for older kids with just a few adaptations to the complexity of what they're reading, but it's still done after a paragraph. So that is one comprehension strategy we could use. We could also ask them questions. Now, in my career, first of all, we used to teach you that you should ask questions that connected the reader to the text. You should ask questions that connect the reader to what's happening in the world. And you should ask questions that connect to the personal experiences of the individual student. Remember that? In fact, we did really a good job just nailing it into your head. 3 kinds of questions. Connect with the text, connect with the world, connect with their experience. And then we did research on it, and we found that one of them actually reduced comprehension. And that was asking as you're reading it for them to share their personal experiences. And so maybe a teacher, this is a non-example, the teacher stops and said, have any of you had the opportunity to watch migrating birds? And what kind of migrating birds did you watch?
Go from my house to Florida, and then we would visit my grandfather.
You would see her yeah. Oh, she's been there. Okay. And then not only do you want to talk about birds, but your grandfather, who had a whole different answer, really wasn't interested in migrating birds, but had cars that he raised right up to his death, but he died in that car. Oh, God, my grandfather died too. Okay, you got like the whole point here. And so having kids learn questions that keep them in the text, not out of the text. In the text, not out of the text. You know you're going to do it. Get your hand ready. Keep them in the text, not out of the text. In the text, not out of the text. So our questions are meant to hone them in on the critical information and not take them out of it. You could ask those kind of questions when you're done, but not as we're reading it, because we want them to get the critical content. And so I decided that now we've had enough migrating birds, so I actually then took another, I asked Anita, can we use the one on canoes? Yes, you can. And I give you total permission and give them permission to reuse it. Okay, so there it is. And so this was another one that I used to teach this. So we read the paragraph, and then I asked them to describe a canoe. And Now, oftentimes, I will have them underline details so that they can then use that in their answer. But one important thing is giving them a sentence starter. For example, for this question, like describe a canoe. Well, if you called on a kid, they might say, well, you know, it's long and there's people that are in it and they sit in the front and they use some kind of paddle to move them, never mentioning the word canoe. So if you want academic language, give them a sentence starter every time, make it a habit so that they are utilizing the word. Or since you're middle school and high school, teach your students how to take any question and turn it into part of the answer. So if the question was, describe a canoe, a canoe could be described in this way, and then they could describe it, but they'd use the word canoe. Okay, and so I asked that question, and then here, they underlined the words, and then this is one of the children's sentences, and in this case, they said it, and then they wrote it down. And then we read the next paragraph, and we read it silently, we read it together, and then I asked them what were Native American canoes made from, and gave them they found the details of birch bark and logs. Yes, and logs, and then gave them a sentence starter. So these are the two ways that we are starting out with one strategy and one asking questions. And we're asking the questions so we could teach them how to generate their own, but we're doing it for a period of time. Like we're doing getting the gist for like 3 weeks. And then we are doing answering questions, and then we're generating questions. And those are the 3 big ones we're doing in 6th grade, but in 7th grade, we start out with those, and then we move to being able to take notes and so forth. So, but we also have them right. And I had fun. So you got more than you ever needed. You might want to do a text structure and give them a graphic organized to summarize based on the text structure. So I took that article and I showed you the types of text structures that you could have students have a graphic organizer with. And they don't need to do all of them for one article. I just gave them to you with one article. So they might have one that has a topic and what, everyone? Details, or a sequence, or compare and, ooh, that's the best one. Best research from Marzano was on compare and contrast for critical thinking. And cause and effect and problem solution. So we have topic and details. I could ask them questions, organizing questions on the canoes, or I could have them fill in a graphic organizer under my supervision of canoes and description and the details and the Native American types and how they are used. Or I could have them compare and contrast. This one led to that. And this is my favorite, compare and contrast, more than having intersecting circles. How are they alike? How are they different in regard of certain things? So how are they like? They are both canoes. They both are long. They both can hold people. They both are moved by paddles. They go down water. How are they different? The materials that they're made from. One is logs and the other is birch bark. So that they're having to think of the category on which they're different. Ooh, ooh, you'll get that. There's the example. Or they could do a sequence. Well, there was a sequence of how to make the canoes. And I'm not telling you again, you don't do all of them, but I just wanted you to have examples of them. And problem solution, there was not one there, but check out Nancy Hennessy's excellent book and her new activity book on comprehension. And okay, and afterwards, we could have a discussion. And today I want to just briefly hit the big ideas of a discussion. Class discussions are useless because 3 kids, they have all the information, everybody else sits around and look. And so what to do to get everybody? Have a good question. And then have them students plan their responses and actually write down their talking points. Now have them share it with their partners, because when they share it with their partners, they've already rehearsed how they might enter the discussion, and they were much more likely to enter the discussion. So they thought about it, they've written it down, their talking points, they shared with a partner, and now they're having a discussion. And in large groups, you might want to break it down into small huddle groups for discussion, not the whole class. So those are the big things. Write down your talking points down, share it with your partners. And write. Right. So we decided that we would start with just writing a paragraph summary. And we used some research from rewards of a strategy. This is why we wanted to do summaries, that they would write down the topic. And the strategy is list, cross out, connect, and number. List, cross out, connect, and number. Everybody? List, cross out, connect, and number. So this is from another group that were reading about the birth of penguins. They made a list, first of all, of the details they wanted to include in their summary. They looked at it and they crossed out things that were irrelevant. They connected ideas that could go in one sentence, because the students often had choppy little sentences, and this made them have more sophisticated sentences. And then they numbered them in the order that they're going to occur in their paragraph. And then they wrote a paragraph. List, cross out, connect, and number. Simple paragraph, simple for 5th and 6th graders to do, but very useful. Okay, and this is where they have a sentence and they have to expand it with the who, the where, and the how. So who? Native Americans. Where? Across North America. How? And telling how, and then putting it all together. And this is one child from the day I taught it, sentence. See if you wouldn't be appreciative of this in 6th grade. Native Americans across North America made canoes from hollowed out logs or birch bark that was stripped from birch trees. Raise your hand if you'd say woo woo. Oh yeah, that's a woo woo. And so if you haven't gotten a copy of the Writing Revolution, raise your hand if you have one. If you teach in middle school or high school, you work with teachers who do, this is by far the best source on systematic, explicit teaching of writing. I give very few books my endorsement, and I endorsed this one as soon as Judith Hochman said, would you endorse? And I said, hallelujah, absolutely, get it now. Maybe while you're there, get explicit instruction, effective and efficient instruction by Anita Archer. All right. And so, but this one is the one that my students loved, because but so, you have a phrase. So we've read about it, and the next day they come in, and on the screen, they see these 3 starter sentences with different conjunctions. And so they say with the because, why, and with the conjunction of but, they go one direction and turn directions. They were going positive, and then they turn it around. And then here they have so, they have to have a reason. All right. But bringing it back to where we were with 1 minute left. Okay. Can you see how we could do the before, during, and after 3 times a week with passages in science, in social studies, and have the repetition? And with strategies that we taught and writing that we taught, but having it change over time to get them even more skilled. Okay, so this is just a wrap it up moment. The students have to be able to read accurately and fluently, and they need to know the meaning of words, vocabulary, everybody, vocabulary, and they need background knowledge, and they need to focus their attention, which could be done with strategies and questions. So we do this before. We teach them the pronunciation. We teach them vocabulary words, and we teach them background knowledge before and during. We read the passage more than one time. Read, stop, respond. Everybody, read, stop, respond. And we could use research-validated strategies, or we could ask them text-dependent questions, or we could look at the text structures and features. And afterwards, we could have a discussion, or we could write in response. So a simple template, but it focuses everybody in the school, not just in their content, but also in embedded strategies that gave them access to that content. I think that this day was well spent. I went to all the sessions except this one, because I thought this one was pretty good too. But we do need, I mean, look at the gap. I mean, that, first of all, we need to be champions of very good reading instruction in K1 and 2. Because really well done, K1 and 2, the kids would come to you being able to read the words. I mean, that would be such a relief to secondary teachers if they could like read the words. And if we taught them vocabulary and background knowledge and strategies and did it consistently across content area classes, the kids are going to emerge brilliant. And that's what we would want. So go Pennsylvania, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Yay, team. Books that you should get. Yes, my favorites. And the videos are going to be available to you, and the PowerPoints will be available to you also.